implementation. When you talk about strategy implementation, it's execution of the strategy. It involves execution of the strategy. It involves execution of the strategy. And matters that are involved here when it comes to strategy execution or strategy implementation, matters that are important here, we are going to talk about organizational structure. So it involves the following. It involves the following. One, we are going to talk about organizational structure. Two, resource allocation. Three, organizational culture. 4, leadership. 5, innovation. And finally, we are going to talk about strategic change. How do we manage change in the organization? So those are the things that we shall be discussing. Under the organizational structure, which is our number 1, you need to know what is an organizational structure. It's a hierarchical structure. It is a hierarchical structure. It is a hierarchical structure running from top to bottom, describing authority within an organization. You need also to understand elements of an organizational structure. What are the elements of an organizational structure? And reference question, let us read November 2020. Let us get to our November 2020 past papers. We look at our November 2020 past papers. Question 1. November. We are told, question 1, we are told, with reference to MGS organizational design, examine 3 elements of an organizational structure, 6 marks. Which are those elements? 1, you can talk about, there is hierarchy of authority. It defines hierarchy of authority. That is authority running from top to bottom. 2, there is also element of specialization. 3, you can also talk about job design. 4, authority and responsibility. An organizational structure defines who has authority and who has the responsibility. Is that clear? So those are the elements of an organizational structure, and we've talked about November 2020, question 1. Then we also need to discuss types of organizational structure. Types of organizational structure. And when we discuss about them, we have the following. Or in another question, the examiner might also ask you basis. In other words, which basis or which grounds can you use to describe or to design your organizational structure? Based on the function, when you create them based on the function, it's called a functional organizational structure. Based on the functions, then that one becomes a functional organizational structure. You can also create your organizational structure based on divisional organizational structure. And divisional organizational structure can either be along the a product organizational structure, to geography, that is based on geography, that is geographical organizational structure, and based on customers that you are serving, and based on the customers, it becomes it's also a divisional organizational structure. And the third one we are going to discuss, it can also be matrix. It can also be matrix. So when it comes to a functional organizational structure is that organization is segmented. An organization is segmented according to specialized functional areas. So departments are according to special functional tasks. So functional tasks, e.g., we have human resource, finance, sales and marketing, ICT, among others. So you'll find that the organization looks like this. We have the following departments. We have human resource. We have sales and marketing department. We have ICT department. We have the finance department that way. What are the advantages? When the examiner tests of the advantages of the functional organizational structure, then along the functions of specialization. When you specialize, because these people are specializing. I'm a specialist in HR, another one is a specialist in sales and marketing, that way. So you are based, or you are placed in your own specialized department. And one of the functions is efficiency and effectiveness. Achievement of efficiency and effectiveness. The second advantage is elimination of duplication of work. I'm referring to the handout. Because duplication of work, we only have one human resource in the head office. Are we together? So we don't have human resource offices across geographical departments. We only have one human resource in the head office. We only have one finance department. So there is no duplication. And 3, increased production. Increased production because people acquire, when you specialize, then you become more accurate, you become even more competent in your specialized department. Is that true? And therefore, it increases the productivity of the employees. You become more experienced in that department. So I've served in the Department of Finance maybe for 20 years. So I'm highly skilled, and therefore it increases the production. Exchange of knowledge and skills, because we have a finance director who can mentor this accounts assistant. And therefore he can be able to mentor him, and therefore there is that increase of knowledge, exchange of knowledge and skills. There is also elimination of wastage. When you don't duplicate departments, you eliminate what? Wastage. And then it facilitates career advancement. It facilitates career advancement and development among employees, and it also facilitates standardization of work and processes. So they are in your handout. That is KCE College handout. So that's what I was reading from. Once you understand the concepts, to understand this is very easy. What are the disadvantages of specialization? Because we've said functional organizational structure is that departments are according to functional tasks. And one of the disadvantages is monotony. It creates what? Monotony. You have been in finance for long, so there is that kind of monotony and boredom. 2, costly for small organizations. Costly for small organizations. And why? Because small organizations are not able to hire to segment this department. In small organizations, you'll find that one person is serving all these roles. He's the HR, he's the finance, he's the ICT, he's everything in that organization. Is that true? And number 3, it discourages teamwork, because you are in your own department, you do not share information with the finance. Is that clear? So it discourages teamwork. And then experts are costly to hire. It's very costly. It is very costly. And finally, lack of coordination. Lack of coordination. Now, as we've said that in November 2020, we can look at the question 1, 2. We are told question 1, 2. With the aid of relevant diagrams, I hope you are there. In November 2020, question 1, 2. This one would help us to score all the 9 marks. November 2020, question 1, Roman 2. Question 1, question A, question A, Roman 2. Question A, Roman 2. We are told, with the aid of relevant diagrams, analyze 3 alternative structural modifications which could be made to MGL's functional organizational structure to make it more flexible. So you find that this company, Mamba Group Limited, is headquartered in Mombasa, Kenya, and it's one of the largest manufacturers and marketers of food, home, personal care products, and brand products in Kenya for several decades. So you find that if you move to, I want to move a bit fast because I want to move a bit fast. Where is there anywhere in the case study you can see in the second paragraph, we are told, apart from its operations in Kenya, MGL also has interest in international food business in Tanzania, Malawi, South Sudan, Uganda, and Rwanda for the period between January 2018 and December 2018. Are you getting? Case study, you find that the structural modification proposed to them, it could be proposed to them. One, can we have it based on the product? We can have it based on the product. So this is what we write to the examiner, that the structural modifications we can use in the Mamba Group Limited functional organization structure are the following. One, we can have the product organizational structure. And then you tell the examiner, you have been told to draw with the aid of relevant diagrams. Then you have to draw. Which products do we have here? And you see from the first paragraph, we have food, home, and personal care products. Food. Then we have personal care brands. And then we also have what? Baby products. Is that true? And then you tell them, so that one is how you know. Then you explain to the examiner that the organization can segregate its functional organizational product and adopt the product organizational based on the food, personal care brand, and the baby product. And then you tell me one of the advantages of why or how it will benefit them, that it will help them to maybe to create core competencies in these different products. And that explanation gives you 2 marks. Are we together? Then another structural modification is they can also adopt the geographical organization. The explanation will give you 2 marks. The drawing will give you a mark. Geographical organizational structure. And you see that we have headquartered in Kenya. So Kenya is going to coordinate these geographical offices. Is that true? They have offices where? In Tanzania. Is that true? They can have geographical offices in Tanzania. Another one is Malawi. The other one is South Sudan. The other one is Uganda. And the other one is Rwanda. And then you give an explanation. You give an explanation that the geographical organizational structure by segmenting it into creating regional offices in these countries, and how will it help? It will help them to maybe reach more customers and even customize products, because you find that people in these different countries have different cultures. And then the other organizational structure, the other one that was there is the matrix organizational structure. Matrix organizational structure. And the matrix organizational structure is that they can have the head. These people, they are reporting to both the both in Kenya as well as in other countries. So that would be the 9 months. So this divisional organizational structure is affect of the departments in different in regards to geography, product, as well as the customers. And what are the advantages? One, it helps us to customize products to different conditions. It's like you're looking at the advantages of decentralization. Are you together? When we decentralize operations or power is discussed, what are the advantages? Fast decision making, is that true? Then team spirit within the division. Team spirit within the division. Then enables an organization to serve a large geographical area. Why? Because right now this have a group limited. There is no way it's going to serve Tanzania, Malawi, South Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda with a functional organizational structure. They need to have regional offices. Is that true? Companies like PwC can be able to serve all the organizations across the world with only one office where they have their headquarters. It's not possible. Is that true? Companies like Coca-Cola, an organization can adapt to different cultures. For instance, you find that people in Nyanza have different cultures, people in Machakos. Is that true? So it can be able to meet those different needs of these people. And then enables an organization to respond quickly to change. Do you agree? To respond quickly to changes in the environment and facilitate diversification of products. Diversification of products. Why? Because you find that people in different geographical areas have different needs. The same thing, customers have different needs. So you can diversify and then enable an organization to create core competencies in specific products. What are the disadvantages? When you create all this, I'm going to try to see the advantages of functional organizational structure. For instance, there was no duplication of work or departments. This one, you have to have functional offices, all these functional departments in each of their geographical areas. So it is very costly. Do you agree that it is very costly? Duplication of work? Is there any duplication of departments? So there is that aspect of duplication of departments. What other disadvantages do we have in functional? The other disadvantage is that encourages rivalry between departments. Do you agree with that? Between divisions, and then difficult to achieve standardization of processes. Why? You'll find that, for instance, have you ever heard of people saying that soda of Nairobi region are sweeter than the ones in Mount Kenya region? Are you together? In other words, there is no uniformity or there is no standardization of processes because you'll find that the operations in one geography are not similar with other geography. And then communication between staff in different locations is costly and problematic, as well as it increases cost of administration. Then we move to the matrix organizational structure. And when you talk about the matrix organizational structure, in this matrix, an organization that is undertaking a special project, there is the project manager as well as the line manager. And employees are required to report both to the project manager and the line manager at the same time. So this kind of an organizational structure violates the principle of unity of command. I'll give you an example. Like in Nairobi, Kenya, the Nairobi City County, the employees of Nairobi City County are required to report both to to the director of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, as well as maybe to the governor or the acting governor of Nairobi. Are we together? Because this NMS is running a special project, beautification of Nairobi, but now they are using the staff of Nairobi City County. So in this case, they have come up with a whole, which kind of a structure? A matrix organizational structure. It helps in sharing of resources, like employees are also resources, is that true? And even equipment. It's a flow of information, because maybe there is a project the Nairobi City County is undertaking. So when they share information with the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, you don't have to duplicate those projects. Is that true? Sharing of information. A matrix organizational structure will also be useful in coordination of activities. Coordination of activities. And then it is also appropriate for complex organizations. Complex organizations, and even creating a highly specialized team. Because now Nairobi Metropolitan Services and has specialized employees, and then the county government of Nairobi will also bring their own employees, and then combining the efforts, they are able to create specialized teams. They are able to create specialized teams. But then there are disadvantages. Like we've seen in Nairobi City County, a lot of confusion, a lot of conflicts between the two, because there will be a lot of conflict between the project manager and the line manager. Is that true? Evading of responsibilities, that the employee is telling you that he has some work to do from the line manager, or he has some assignments that he's undertaking with the project manager. Are we together? Yes. Then it also makes work difficult to coordinate, and even communication problems, especially where there are conflicts, then there is communication problems. Are we together? Yes. So that's all about organizational structures. We've also seen the questions that have been tested in regards to organizational structures. Let's talk about organizational resource allocation. When you talk about resource allocation, resources are very important, and the factors that impact on resource allocation are the resources available? What are the management priorities? What are the management priorities in regard to activities of the organization? What are the what are the external influences? Even the external environment will impact on resource allocation. It will impact on resource allocation. Then let's move on to the next, which is organizational culture. And when you talk about organizational culture, the types of organizational culture, the types of the organizational culture that we can have, for instance, we have the power culture. And the power culture is a culture that is influenced by the owners of the organization. It is influenced by the owners of the organization. So types of organizational culture, we can discuss them. And we talk about types of organizational culture. Types of organizational culture. One, we have power culture, and a power culture is a culture that is dependent on the owners of the organization. We also have the role culture, also called bureaucratic. And this bureaucratic culture, if you remember, when we were looking at the topic, development of management thought, under the classical theories or the classical schools of thought, which were divided into scientific, administrative, and bureaucratic. Under bureaucratic, we looked at the contributions of the Max Weber to management today. And this is all about the role culture. And we talked about system of rules and procedures. We talked about impersonality. We talked about hierarchy of authority. We talked about specialization and technical competence and strictness to job description. So that's what defines the bureaucratic culture. The contributions of Max Weber defines the bureaucratic culture. And number 3, we have the task culture. We have the task culture, also called the Japanese task culture. Do you remember when did you talk about Diorized under the development of management dot? Diorized by who? William Ouchi. And we say that William Ouchi studied the Japanese companies and why they were doing way better than what? The American companies. And he found out that they were using certain management principles. For instance, teamwork, security of tenure or job security. They were giving security, job security to their employees. There was a lot of participation of the employees in decision making. They were also employing elements of job rotation. So that's what defines the William Ouchi Diorized defines the Japanese task culture. It defines the Japanese task culture. And then finally, we have the person culture. And the person culture is dependent on the person who has. The culture is dependent on the person, who is technically qualified. For instance, if I'm the best in CPA, I'm a CPA K in my organization. So anything to do with CPA accounts, people come for me. People come to consult me on matters to do with accounts in the organization. So there is that person culture because it's dependent on the person who is technically qualified. Are we together? So those are the types of culture. Then we look at leadership, which is the next. And when we talk about leadership, which leadership styles? Do you know the leadership styles? When you talk about leadership styles that can be adopted, we have autocratic. Autocratic also is called authoritative. Authoritative, also called dictatorial. That means that the boss or the manager has a lot of authority and the decision-making authority is with the manager. So employees have limited scope. They have limited contributions in terms of the decisions made in the organization. Two, we have democratic, what do we mean by democratic leadership? Democratic means, it means participatory leadership. It means participatory leadership. So that employees are given an opportunity or they contribute in decision-making of the organization. And finally, we have laissez-faire. Do you know what it means by laissez-faire? Laissez-faire means that the leader, employees have total control. Employees have total control. So the leader has no control over the employees. Are we together? So employees have total control. The leader has almost no control over the employees. So the employees, in circumstances where the employees are more skilled than the leader, the employees are more skilled than the leader. I would like us to attempt May 2018 question 1B. May 2018 question 1B. May 2018 question 1B. May 2018 question 1B. And we are told, evaluate 6 possible effects of Pero-Kero style of leadership to BL. So this Pero-Kero style of leadership. So we are told, I want us to see where we can get an idea of which kind of style. So in the third paragraph from the last, I would like us to read it. The third paragraph from the last, then which line? 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth line, I'm going to read it. We are told, Pero-Kero's leadership style was contradictory and demanding. He was an autocrat who issued direct orders across the organization without any regard to the chain of command and always expected military precision. Executives were reprimanded in the presence of their subordinates, employees were fired for indiscretion. So then we are told, can we be able to evaluate 6 possible effects of parochial style of leadership to BL? 1, yes, which kind of, what would happen in that organization? 1, demotivation of the employees, that's 1. Employees become demotivated. 2, high labor turnover. High labor turnover means employees leave that organization. Is that true? High labor turnover. 3, low productivity. Low productivity. 4, online students. I'm waiting for your answers. 4, we are looking at parochial effects. Effects of parochial style of leadership. That is autocratic. 4, yes. So what are those? What are the effects of that? Employees become demotivated. We say that there is high labor turnover. Then there is low productivity. Yes? Yes? Inefficiency and ineffectiveness, or misuse of resources. Misuse of resources, very true. 5, online, I'm waiting for your answers. I'm waiting for your answers. What else would happen with parochial style of leadership? Employees turnover, insecurity of company information to competitors. Okay, the burning answers are turnover, low productivity, inefficiency. Yes? Absenteeism, employees start missing from work. Is that true? Kind of absenteeism. What else? Misuse of resources. What else? So we are okay with that. So then I'm getting limited or no innovation by employees. Is that clear? Lack of innovation and reduced profits for the company, or reduced productivity. Reduced productivity. So that's okay. Now I want to talk about change management. I want to move to change management. And when you talk about change, change can be classified under the following. Change can be classified based on the following. Based on the following. Change can be classified based on the following. Based on the following. 1, we can look at change based on speed of change. Speed of change. And 2, extent of change. Extent of change. And 3, focus of change. 3, focus of change. Speed of change, extent of change, and focus of change. Now, let's first of all discuss these two, speed and the extent. And I would like us to read the question in November 2018, question 3B1. November 2018, question 3B1. November 2018, question 3B1. And the question reads, in the context as 3B1, we are told strategic change could be classified by the extent of change required and the speed with which the change is achieved. With reference to the above statement, discuss 4 types of change. Discuss 4 types of change. Discuss 4 types of change. So when we talk about the speed of change, we are trying to answer the question in November 2018. We can draw this diagram to help us understand. How to know the types of change. One, we look here, we talk about transformation, and here we talk about realignment. Here we talk about incremental and the big bang. When you talk about incremental, means that it's what does the word incremental means? Slowly, is that true? Whereas big bang means at once. So these two terms are helping us to understand the speed of change. They are helping us to understand the speed of change. Then, when you talk about transformation and realignment, transformation means the entire. Transformation means the entire, whereas realignment means some parts. Is that true? And therefore, it helps us to understand which kind of change. Extent of change. Extent of change. A change that targets the entire organization. See this. A change that targets the entire organization, but undertaken slowly. Are you seeing? A change that targets the entire organization, but undertaken slowly is called evolution. It's called evolution. A change that targets some parts of the organization, it realigns some parts of the organization and undertaken slowly is called adaptation. It's called adaptation. Then change that targets the entire organization and undertaken very fast is called revolution. It's called revolution. Are you together? And change that targets some parts of the organization but undertaken very fast is called reconstruction. So in that question of November 2018, the answers were evolution, adaptation, revolution, and reconstruction. And then you explain each of them. So the explanation that you'll give looks like this. Evolution is the change that is transformational in nature and undertaken slowly in the organization. Its evolution is undertaken on the entire organization and undertaken slowly. So, and then. So as I was explaining, we go on to look at the types of change. When you talk about extent of change, you've understood what it means by transformation and realignment. Then you give this explanation that evolution is change that targets the entire organization but undertaken slowly. Revolution is the change that targets the entire organization but undertaken very fast. Adaptation is the change that targets some parts of the organization but undertaken slowly. Reconstruction is the change that targets some parts of the organization and undertaken very fast. Are you together? Yes. Then we've also said that you can classify change according to the focus of change. Focus of change. And when you talk about the focus of change, one, this change can be focusing on the structures. One is structural change. And the structural change can be, for instance, e.g. downsizing downsizing. 2, it can be divestiture, etc. 2, it can be technological change. Technological change. And when you talk about technological change, it can be based on the process, ICT, among others. It can also be people-centered change. People-centered change. And when you talk about people-centered change, it can be, e.g., social change, performance, social, targeting social, performance, etc., etc. And then it can be market forecast change, market forecast change. And finally, it can also be on strategy forecast change, strategy forecast change. Strategy forecast change. So that is based on the forecast. We've also seen based on the speed and the extent. Based on the speed and the extent. So we move on to look at how to develop a culture conducive to change. How to develop a culture conducive to change. Conducive to change. And how do we develop a culture conducive to change? Definitely, this is a question that has been tested severally. November 2019, question 4A, we can see. Just go to November 2019, question 4A. Just open November 2019, question 4A. And the question tests, describe 5 ways of managing strategic change in an organization. Ways of managing strategic change in an organization. And the other question is November 2018, question 3B. November 2018, question 3B. November 2018, question 3B. And we are told strategic change, okay, no, question 3B2, analyze 3 ways of instituting strategic change in an organization. One of the ways is definitely training. Is that true? Training and education. Training and education. So that people can accept. We are looking at ways in which we can make people accept change. And the second way is rewards. Rewards. And the third way is, so we can talk about rewards and punishments. Punishments will make people accept change. Is that true? Rewards, the same way, rewarding them. 3 is participatory decision making. Participatory decision making. Participatory decision making will also make people accept change. Then leading by example. Leading by example. Leading by example will also make people, in other words, you as the manager accept change so that the employees can see that as the manager, he has accepted change by coming to work early, by being more close to the customers, even the employees will copy you. Then use of change agents, use of change agents, use of change agents. And finally is communication. Communicate consistently. Communicate consistently. Communicate consistently. So those are some of the ways in which we can be able to encourage change in the organization. Let's look at models of change management. Models of change management. Models of change management. And when we talk about models of change management, we are going to discuss 2 models. Models of change management. One of the models we are going to discuss is the Kotter's 8-step change model. Kotter's 8-step change model. And Lewin change process model. Lewin Lewin change process model. Change process model. Let's start with the first one, which is Kotter's 8-step change model. And the first, when you want to bring change into the organization, you can use these steps. One, create urgency. That's the first step in Kotter's 8-step change model. Create urgency. How do you create urgency? In creating urgency, you demonstrate to the employees why change is necessary. By what? By showing them the threats. If we do not change, these are the threats. Is that true? And demonstrating to them the opportunities of change. Are you together? So here, by creating urgency, that if we do not adopt this change, if we don't adopt technology, we are going to lose our jobs. Is that true? You show them the threats. The second step is form a powerful coalition. Form a powerful coalition. Made up of who? Made up of the change agents. People who are going to drive the change process in the organization. Are you together? People who are going to drive the change process in the organization. So that's what we are calling powerful coalition. And the third step is create a vision for change. Create a vision for change. That is by changing. Create a vision for change. By adopting change, this is what we desire to achieve in the long run. This is what we desire to achieve in the long run. Then remove obstacles. What are obstacles? Obstacles are those factors that make people resist change. Obstacles are those factors that make people resist change. For instance, self-interest. Self-interest. Another factor is misunderstanding. Another factor is low tolerance. And another factor is different assessments of the situation. Different assessments of the situation. I hope so far we are okay. So me, I have been able to master them because it's a question that was tested. We are going to see it was tested in May 2016, question 2B. And the first step was creating urgency. Creating urgency. The second step was forming a powerful coalition. The third step was creating a vision for change. And the fourth step is removing obstacles. Let's move to the fifth step. The fifth step is create short-term wins. Create short-term wins. Create short-term wins. In other words, as much as you want to achieve that vision for the next 10 years, we need to see, you need to create short-term goals in which can be achieved within a year. Are you together? Because by achieving that 1 year goal, we are motivated to work harder. Is that true? Then the sixth is build on the change. Build on the change. And how do you build on the change? That is sustaining change in the long term. Sustaining change in the long term. Sustaining change in the long term. Sustaining. So this is create. So removing obstacles was step number. No, so there is the fourth. This is step number 5. I have forgotten. After creating the vision for change, communicate the vision. You create the vision for change and you communicate the vision, remove obstacles, then create short-term wins, then build on the change, and then anchor the change in the corporate culture. Anchor the change in the corporate culture. Anchor the change in the corporate culture. So kindly memorize that steps. It's very important because if it is tested, you score 8 marks. From the first step, which was creating urgency for change, and the second step was forming a powerful coalition, and the third step is create create a vision for change, and then you communicate the vision. And the 5th step is removing the obstacles. And the 6th step is create short-term wins. And then the 7th step is building on the change and then anchoring that change in the corporate culture. Let's see that question, May 2016, question 2B. May 2016, question 2B. May 2016, question 2B. May 2016, question 2B. And the question is, with the use of a well-labeled diagram, describe John Cotter's 8-step process for leading change. With the use of a well-labeled diagram, describe John Cotter's 8-step process for leading change. By drawing a diagram, and the diagram is not hard, just draw the first step is create urgency. Then, after creating urgency, form a powerful coalition. You just draw a simple diagram that is directing somebody to the first step, to the second step, to the 8th step. By drawing that diagram, you score 3 marks. In other words, the examiner wants to see whether you can state all those 8 steps. You score how many marks? 3 marks. Then you explain each step. You explain each step to get the other 8 marks. Are you together? And the explanation, a very brief explanation, not long explanation. Forming a powerful coalition, then you give a small explanation. Are you together? You score the other 8 marks. We move to the Lewin 3-step change model process, Lewin change process model. And when we talk about Lewin step change, so when it comes to Lewin 3-stage model, Lewin 3-stage model, to him, he just collapses these 8 steps to 3 steps. And the 3 steps are 1, unfreezing, 2, changing, change, and 3, refreezing. And 3 is what? Refreezing. What is unfreezing? Making the current situation uncomfortable. Is it not as the same as creating urgency? You make the current situation uncomfortable for the employees. You make it not look appropriate. You make the current situation look not appropriate. Are we together? And then changing is after now they see that the current situation is not favorable, they accept what? Change. They accept change. So you undertake the change. You undertake the change. And then refreezing is making the change. You're making the change part of the culture of the organization. Making the change part of the culture of the organization. Making change part of the culture of the organization. Then factors that trigger change. Let's look at that. Factors that trigger change in the organization. Factors that trigger change in the organization. Factors that trigger change in the organization, or triggers of change. Let's write down something. Triggers of change. Triggers of change. Triggers of change. Triggers of change. So when you talk about triggers of change, it's a question that has been tested also. We can read it. I think there's a question on triggers of change. We can read, let's look at, I think it's May 2017. Let's look at May 2017, question 2C. May 2017. May 2017. I'm trying to get to my May 2017. No, let's look at May 20, no, not May 2017, November 2015. November 2015. November 2015, question 4C. November 2015, question 4C. And the question reads, in a change management forum, one of the facilitators noted that change in an organization can be triggered by a number of external and internal factors. With reference to the above statement, summarize 5 internal factors that might trigger change in the organization. Are we together? So triggers of change, we said triggers of change can either be internal triggers, and internal triggers are also called endogenous. They are also called endogenous. Internal triggers are also called endogenous, and they include the following. One, new strategy. Internal triggers, for instance, we have new strategy, financial crisis in the organization, financial crisis in the organization, financial crisis and poor organizational performance, and poor organizational performance, and poor organizational performance. 3, we have dissatisfaction with the current status, dissatisfaction with the current status. And number 4, need to improve productivity, need to improve productivity, need to improve productivity. And number 5 is need to grow the business, need to grow the business, need to grow the business. Need to improve quality of goods, need to improve quality of goods, need to improve quality of goods. And finally, need to introduce new culture, need to introduce new culture, need to introduce new culture. So those are the endogenous, also called the internal triggers. And then we have external triggers, also called exogenous. External triggers, also called exogenous. And which are these external triggers? 1, globalization. Globalization. 2, market forces, e.g., market forces, e.g., entry of competitors, entry of new competitors, entry of new competitors, entry of new competitors. 3, macroeconomic factors, macroeconomic factors, e.g., for instance, we have inflation, And number 4, we have technology. And number 5, we have changes in government policies, changes in government policies, changes in government policies, changes in government policies. Then international forces, international forces. And then ecological factors like climate, ecological factors, e.g. climate. So those are called exogenous or external triggers. They are called exogenous, also called external triggers. We move on to look at the innovation management, which is also part of strategy implementation. And the most common question you can be tested on innovation management is how to encourage innovation in an organization. We can brainstorm this. How do you encourage innovation in an organization? 1, availing the resources. So once an employee comes up with an innovation, you avail resources to execute that innovation. 2nd, communication. They are the same thing that we talked about managing change. Communication. You communicate, training, you train them so that employees will become innovative if they have the right skills. Is that true? And number 4, rewards. Is that true? When an employee innovates, you give them rewards. What else? having a research and development department, and then you also need to participatory decision making. Can you see are they related with what we were talking about managing change? Participatory decision making. And finally, you also talk about open door policy. Open door policy means that an employee is free to go to the manager and give him his ideas. Are we together? Open door policy means that the manager is approachable. The manager is approachable. That's what it means by innovation management. And then we finalize, we look at knowledge management. So we've talked about innovation management, and we say that in regard to innovation management, we need to encourage innovation in the organization by having a research and development, rewards, training, participatory decision making, communication. So knowledge management. When you talk about knowledge management, now let's say you've encountered a problem in the organization. If you encounter an issue in the organization, you learn on how you are able to overcome that problem. In case you encounter a future problem, will you be able to resolve it by using the past experiences you had? Through which systems? By creating knowledge management systems. There's a question that was tested. Why in May 2018, let's look at May 2018 question 3A. May 2018 question 3A. May 2018 question 3A. May 2018 question 3A. Discuss 6 measures an organization should consider while strengthening knowledge management. So, for instance, ourselves, like KCE College, we have so many ways in which we have strengthened our knowledge management. Like now, the way we are recording these classes, if another student comes tomorrow and wants to watch SG class, he can get those recordings. Is that true? Which other ways in which we can strengthen knowledge management? One way is having knowledge archival systems. Archiving knowledge through content repository systems. We can archive it in the clouds. No, you did MIS. Is that true? So that is one way, having content repository systems or knowledge repository systems. Another way, establishing a library. Is that true? Establishing a library. Number 3, we invest in research and training. Research and training. So that those employees who are highly skilled, for instance, an employee may leave this organization, but then do we have somebody who has already been trained, who can take over from the employee? Are you together? So that is training. Another way in which we can encourage, we can build on the knowledge. How else can we build on the knowledge? Trainings, workshops, research and development. How else can we build on the knowledge? How training, use of ICT, workflow charts, having organizational manuals and publications. Organizational manuals and publications. Importance of knowledge. Let's start off with importance of knowledge management. And one of the importance of knowledge management is that we are able to improve quality decision making. Quality decision making. That one can use the past lessons to make decisions. 2 is, does it encourage innovation? Will it encourage innovation? In other words, knowledge management involves sharing of information. Are you together? Does it encourage innovation? When we have knowledgeable people, those knowledgeable people are innovative. So second benefit is innovation. 3, high productivity. High productivity. And 4, efficiency and effectiveness. Increased efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency and effectiveness. And then increased customer satisfaction, increased customer satisfaction, increased customer satisfaction. And then reusing past experiences, to resolve future problems, And then let's also understand components of knowledge management. When you talk about components of knowledge management, what do we preserve? For instance, we need to preserve or we need to archive organizational processes. That even if we were to change the entire organization and you remove everybody here and bring new people, but the organizational processes would remain the same. We need to preserve organizational processes. 2, we need to preserve the organizational structure. 3, corporate strategy. Number 4, technology. And number 5, expertise. And number 6, lessons learned. So those are some of the things that we need to preserve as an organization. Then measures to encourage knowledge management or tools of knowledge management. Measures to encourage knowledge management or tools of knowledge measures / tools of KM. That is knowledge management. 1, we can have a resource center. 2, encourage trainings. 3, research and development. And 4, we also need to workflow charts. Have workflow charts. And then organizational manuals and publication. Those are some of the ways in which we can encourage knowledge management. And finally, we look at constraints in strategy implementation. Constraints. When we are implementing a strategy, constraints in strategy implementation. And number 1 of the constraints in strategy implementation, what challenges do we encounter? Do we encounter scarce resources? Scarcity of scarce resources or inadequate resources? 2, poor leadership. Poor leadership is another problem. 3, poor communication. And number 4, risks and uncertainties. And number 5, low skills among employees. And finally, lack of a reward system. So those are some of the challenges that we encounter while implementing a strategy. So that brings us to the end of the topic, strategy implementation. Thank you.